I can actually put a book beside me for 3 or 4 days, and I'm quoting it without opening it. It started when I was 11 years old, and we had a Southern Baptist pastor come and visit us from our grandmother, and he started talking about God and Jesus, and I didn't know who these guys were. And so I was sitting there with my sister, who was 13, and my mother and my grandmother, and I'm talking directly to this pastor about, who is this God fella? Who is Jesus? And he said, well, they love you. And I said, I'm not loved. What is that word? And so he said, well, if you invite Jesus into your heart, then you will be loved. And I thought, well, I have to have that thing, even though I don't know these guys. So immediately I asked him, I said, how do I know that I actually do it? And he said, well, if you know that you have a need and you ask, it is given. And I said, okay. So I asked, and immediately, overnight, everything in my life changed. Everything. Nothing was the same. The songs that I liked, the music, my friends, the dresses, the clothes that I had, I completely changed. Everything in my life changed, and my sister did not. Even though she said that prayer as well, she did not change. And I asked her about it 2 weeks later, and she said, I must not have gotten saved. So then when I was in my 20s, I'm starting to scan people's bodies. I'm freaking kids out in school. I'm telling them things that I should not know. I really believed that every single thing that I knew, everybody else knew. I didn't know that I was different. It wasn't until I was in my 20s and people started lining up basically to come to my door. It was like one after the other was coming inside. They weren't literally lining up, but people were finding me from North Carolina, anywhere around, and they were appearing at my doorstep. And I was being of assistance, and I was scanning them and reading them and giving them information and just helping people for free. I was really doing sessions for free from the time that I was 11 years old until. This was very painful for me in a lot of ways, because as a kid and even as a young adult, thinking that everybody knows what you're talking about. And you're asking about their grandmother being in the hospital, or you're asking about their dog that died, or you're asking about whatever, and they're getting freaked out. So I became very traumatized by knowing information that other people didn't. And in my late 20s, when I finally realized nobody is like me that I know, I started feeling very alone, isolated, and I was also getting very strong responses that were very dramatic. People either loved me or they hated me or they ran from me, and I couldn't understand why. Because in my little immature mind, I'm thinking, but everybody knows this, why can't we talk about it? So there was already forming in me this ability to scan people's bodies, to scan their minds, to know things, to know why they're suffering, and then to actually try to talk to them about it, to get them through the suffering. I always knew that there was a pressure on me, to assist people and to help, and I was misusing it, not knowing I was misusing it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So the scanning and the disabilities that you had were always there, or they were coming through you or to you in certain moments?
Just certain moments, and I didn't know how to control it. And that progression of these abilities and the way that they come through has been really spontaneous and in the moment with whoever I need. I started to understand that after reading people's bodies and scanning them literally and saying, okay, you have a tumor right there in this side down here. If you let me put my hands on it and pray, it will go away. What tests do you have at the hospital at 10:30 in the morning? And they go, wow, I do have a test scheduled. I said, if you want to be healed, let me know. I'll lay my hands on it. That will disappear. And then tomorrow morning when you go to the hospital, it will be gone. And it will baffle the doctors. And it started occurring. So then I also started remotely viewing. And I don't know if you know what that means, but it's more than what the government used to train their people to do, because they weren't really viewing anything. The way that the government did it was an assimilation of facts to get to the target. I actually tried to go through that training with somebody in Cabo when I was there on vacation, and he just stopped the whole process. He said, you're so far beyond this. I can't even teach you this. So remotely viewing, in my view, is suddenly being transported as if I'm in two places at one time. And I'm not only seeing my reality, but I'm seeing the reality of someone else in real time. And that started in my 20s too. It's like you wake up and you don't even know that this is going to happen to you today, or that you're going to have this ability. And when it did happen, in the moment when I'm in the mode of helping people, then I wasn't really thinking that this was an issue. But then when they would leave, I'd go, what does this mean? And what is this? And what is this called? And I'm becoming more of a freak, because these abilities are being uncovered with the needs of the people that are coming through my door, and even knowing things about people in other states, and that they're going to find me the next day, and they're going to pretend that they're lost, and knowing that they're suicidal. I mean, it was really strange. I would think of somebody and they would call, this inherent knowing, like your feelers are out and you can tell multidimensional things happening when they're happening for other people and for myself. Knowing somebody's going to come to my door. I mean, and then they knock on the door and I have my hand on the door handle. I would go to the phone to answer the phone, and a second before it would ring. So I really believed in my 20s that because I had these access to this kind of information that everybody else did. And then when I realized that I was an anomaly, I felt great pain. I felt discomfort. I felt separation. I felt I'm this freak that's walking around on this earth, and I just want to fit in. I just want to be normal. But I wasn't. And so I really walked away from it for 13 years. I did not even say spirit or God to anyone for 13 years. I said, I can't, I'm not mature in this. I'm not mature enough to handle the responsibility of accessing all of this information and really being able to assimilate it in a mature way. Plus, I was in a marriage that really was causing me a lot of pain, and I needed to get out of it. I needed to take care of myself. I said in my late 20s, stop this. Stop sending me people. Stop this process and let me heal myself. And then once I heal myself, if I can do this with love, without any form of judgment, then bring it back. And 13 years later, somebody handed me a book. And I knew the moment that they handed me a book. It wasn't even a spiritual person. It was somebody that owned a fabric store that I'd become friends with. And because I was a master seamstress and soft goods designer following just the physical path, I was in that world. And when Tony, who is now transitioned, handed me this book, I knew, uh-oh, it's beginning again. But I also knew that I had said, my qualification is that if I can mature and I can actually handle this and it's not traumatizing me, causing me pain, because the biggest thing that I always worried about, in spite of all the abilities that I had, the healings, the raising of the animals of the dead, doing all these crazy things that I was doing, the biggest fear that I had in my life was that I was hurting people by being here, by being me. I was making them uncomfortable. I was causing people to run from me. I was causing people to, their parents were saying, you can't hang out with that little girl anymore because we didn't want you to know this information. And how does she know this information? So it was like I was a threat by being who I was. And so I remember one day watching, I was out riding my bike and I was like, help me, give me this understanding. And I was told, go watch the movie Frozen. And I only watched the first few minutes, and it answered this for me. She had these abilities, and she was told, hide it, conceal it, don't feel it, don't use it, you'll hurt somebody with it. So those of us who come in that are anomalies, that are very different, that have abilities that's not normal, we are not only loved, but we are hated with the same measure. And so I equated in my little mind, me being here causes people pain. Instead of just owning it, stepping into the power of that, and then saying, I am who I am, and if you love me, okay. If you hate me, okay. It was hard because I was used to abuse. I was used to pain. And so even doing that kind of work represented pain for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So let's go back to the book that was given to you. What was the book about?
It was the power of the subconscious mind.
Okay. And what is it about the book that brought you back to that, to your
I knew
side?
the moment that he said, Tammy, I've got a book that I want you to read. I'm like, oh no, oh no. And it's coming from a non-spiritual source. I knew inherently. And as soon as I touched it, see, I can touch an object as an empath. I can actually put a book beside me for 3 or 4 days, and I'm quoting it without opening it. I'm absorbing the energy and the information. So when he passed the book in my hand, as an empath, I touched it and went, oh. And so I started reading it, and basically the guy's talking about how you think and opening your mind. And I was like, this is going to open a whole new paradigm for me. And even though it's a predominantly religious point of view, and there's a lot of misunderstandings in it, you know, legalism and that kind of thing, it still reawakened me. And science and scientist and this physicist who didn't even know he was proving spiritual laws was constantly sitting in front of me and saying, I want you to know I proved this. And I'm like, you have no idea that that's a spiritual law that you're proving. And he got excited. And he said, wow, I didn't know that I'm correlating with things that you teach. And that was really me coming to a point of saying, I don't just need to know the spiritual and the psychological and the emotional realm. I need the physical realm too in order to reach people on a cohesive level where all three facets of you, your spirit body, a spirit mind, which is the emotional realm, and a physical, which includes all of the physical, not just the physical body, but all of the physical. I wanted to join the three of them together, and that's what I've been doing the last few years. But I haven't been able to learn from metaphysical people or go to a school or even have a mentor to teach me those things. I was getting it direct. I was getting downloads of living life, getting the information, and then asking for the practicality of show me this principle, this download, this concept in a physical realm, or it would just disappear. And I wouldn't remember what it was. But once it tangibly got represented in a physical way, I had it. And that truth never goes away. I would say that what I do is go into the garden of somebody's life. And I know where the weeds are. And I know where the issues began. I know what the reciprocal patterns are. I know what the threshold is of where you're about to reach the next level. I know what level of growth you are in. I know the predicaments that you are constantly creating. I know where they started. I know when they began. I know when the energy built up to a certain point where it's solidified and you've programmed it. I know who you are as a higher self, and I can see the entire gap of what that is and how to guide the person home to becoming whole and stepping into their power. So my work is mostly about identifying and educating and revealing and breaking the illusions of and the paradigms of how you think you're living, which is one of the things that was just said in the workshop that I was just working, and I was asking them, what's your takeaways? And they said, what I thought I was doing, I wasn't doing. And the physical is proving what I'm doing. And these aha moments of, this is what you're really doing. So I'm communicating past the mind level. I'm communicating on a higher self, soul, spiritual level. I'm bypassing just the left brain or right brain thinking. And I'm going into the soul and the spiritual knowing about the person, and I'm seeing all of it from where they are to who they are. This identity that they have that is fake, I know how many layers there are to it. I know how long it's probably going to take them to do it. I know how much work they're going to need. I know what the steps are. I know what the journey is going to be. It's kind of wild. So when I work with people and I mentor them or I do the work with them, I know 2 or 3 levels. It's like a chess game. I know 2 or 3 to 8 levels of their curriculum way before we begin it. It's like everybody has the exact same curriculum and journey, but we're all at different levels. And the individuality, the intrinsic ability of the non-physical and me being able to tap into that, not completely, but certainly more than most human beings alive today, and assimilating that information and being a receptor and really an empty vessel of saying, here I am, and just give me this information to assist this person. I don't get attached to whether they take it or not, whether they hate me or not, whether they enjoy it or not, whether they turn on me or not, or whether or not they change. It's my job to educate so that they can step into the power of making the choice. That's one of the biggest things I think people don't do. They don't know that they can choose. There's actually levels of mediumship. In the beginning, the very elemental part of it is being a psychic. So a psychic can read the information around the auric field of a person, even tap into some of the Akashic records, and they can get that information. A medium is already a psychic. So when mediums call themselves a psychic medium, they're being redundant because they already are. A psychic is not a medium. A medium is already a psychic because it's a next level up. So then there's levels of mediumship that far reach what we currently know about, even what my knowledge is. So the elemental mediumship, which I already do, is communicate with people who have crossed over to the other side and bring back information and details that I cannot possibly know. There's no way for me to know that information. So then my work personally and how I differ is that I don't just do that. People will come back to me only for the purpose of healing for the other. So let's say that somebody has been abusive, or they hurt, or they neglected, or they weren't really there for them. And that person is still in pain because their identity is tied to that neglect or that abuse. Then the person that crossed over will come to me, stand in front of me. I can describe their clothes. I can describe everything about them, how they worked, what their personality is, what their energy is, whether or not they were boisterous, whether or not they had a soft voice. All of the facts are there. And then I say, this is what he or she is telling me that they did to you, and they want you to get healed. It is fascinating. And then that happens with people who are alive as well, which is another level of mediumship, is being able to communicate with all non-physical beings. And that means us as a spirit. Let's say you don't even know that you have hurt somebody and they're hurting over it. You may appear to me and be alive today. That's another level of mediumship, when you have the ability to communicate with all non-physical beings. Every single person that has crossed your path, every single energetic exchange, every single joke you've ever heard, every single word that you've ever heard, every single store that you've been in, and all of the energy of all of the beings that were in that store, then you multiply that times all lifetimes. And that is what I have access to. Sometimes I will be looking at 3 different lifetimes and the person is talking to me, but they're sitting in front of me. And I am assimilating why I have 3 different versions of them, one a priest, one a nun, one a poor woman, and all 3 of them have a theme. And the lady's sitting in the den with me, and I said, and I'm looking around, and she's looking at me, and I said, sorry, you got to give me a minute. All 3 of you are screaming at me. So if you'll just let me go into and talk to these and get this information from this one, get this information from this one, and then this one, then I can tell you how that relates to today and where your healing is. None of us that do this want to do it. I would say that I have not met a leader or someone who came here to do a big level of work not fight it. Every single one of us fight it. But here's the kicker. If you in doing the past work in your lifetimes, have not yet embraced the fact that you earned these abilities. And you did earn them. They're not gifts. You're not special. I'm not gifted. I'm not special. I have done the work. I have done enough of the personal work that I am using levels of the brain that everyone has. That is the only difference. As mediums, as spiritual teachers, I would petition you and say, can you consider completing the healing of yourself, or at least going more into that so that you can get your own inner guidance system, learn how to wield it, learn how to use the tools that you paid for. You earned these abilities. This wasn't just given to you. You earned it. So why not learn how to use it? Why not go to somebody who can teach you, who can mentor you, to show you who you are and how to use it, and what the difference is between when you use it as a blessing and when you use it as a curse. That awareness, that truth, sets you free and causes you to stand in the power of I am, and being able to use your abilities that you not only have, but can earn as you go the process of clearing, of healing, of getting your own answers, of learning your sensitivities. And do you mind if I give an illustration of that?
Yeah.
So people that are what I call older souls, they're more aware and they're also more sensitive. So imagine if you're very sensitive and you pick up on other people's energy and you don't know that you were supposed to just pay attention to the energy for information for you, and you start taking it on and you feel the pain. Imagine, as an empath, one of the things that happens to me is that my physical body will contort. This is called another level of mediumship. It's called transmediumship, where you can actually shapeshift into a different form. So my body will actually change, and I will feel the strain around the neck from where somebody has hung themselves. I'll feel the pain of the heart attack for a few moments. I will feel the knots in the stomach. I will have a distended abdomen to show me. My tongue has swollen before, 1 inch to 1.5 inches, because I had a client on the way. And what I had learned to do, if I would have kept those symptoms, if I would have kept that energy, I'd be walking around as a complete invalid and crippled. So what you do is you learn that you have these sensitivities, you accept it, you embrace it, and you say, okay, I'm sensitive. Now how can I use it? And how can I use it wisely? And how can I use it in a way that's not codependency and not taking on the issues of somebody else and being disrespectful of their journey? That is getting to a place of being a witness, where you notice it, but you do not take it on as yours. That's one of the biggest issues I see with older souls. They feel the damage, they feel the pain, they feel the suffering emotionally, and they take it from the other person. They're in a great mood, and you're hurting. That is what I call a spiritual codependency. And noticing it and allowing them to carry that, seeing, I see your journey. I see where you are. I see what you're doing. That is your curriculum. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.